flickering torchlight across ancient marble statues, a faint echo of a woman's laughter. Plato once said, "The greatest mistake a man can make is to believe that beauty equals virtue." He watched empires fall, not to war, but to desire. Men who could conquer nations, but not their own hearts. 2,000 years later, the warning still stands. Most men didn't listen then, and they're still not listening now. They say every great man in history was warned, but none of them listened. Socrates tried to warn men about desire. Marcus Aurelius warned them about control. But it was Plato who saw the full danger, the way beauty could turn into a weapon and love into a battlefield. This is the story of Plato's forbidden teaching, the truth he never said directly, but buried inside his dialogues, a truth about most women that men refuse to hear and still suffer for today. The Athenian sky glows orange over white marble. Plato sits beneath an olive tree, listening to the chatter of men debating love and virtue. He watches as one young man brags about a woman's beauty, her eyes, her lips, her laugh. Another speaks of heartbreak, betrayal, despair. Plato says nothing. He just listens and smiles faintly. He has seen this cycle before. Beauty, desire, obsession, ruin. To Plato, love was not romance. It was a mirror, and what men saw in women was never about women at all. It was about themselves. Years earlier, Plato had witnessed the fall of his teacher, Socrates, condemned to death by men swayed by emotions, jealousy, vanity, pride, all traits he later saw reflected in both politics and relationships. He wrote in his notes, "The world is not ruled by truth, but by desire. Whoever controls desire controls men." And Plato saw that many women had mastered this, not through wisdom, but instinct. They didn't fight for power with swords or politics, but with allure, with silence, with attention, with withdrawal. Plato realized something dangerous. Most men lose their reason not in war, but in love. In the Symposium, Plato presents his theory of love through the words of others, hiding his true thoughts behind dialogues. He lets others speak about beauty, desire, the pursuit of the divine. But underneath, a pattern emerges, one he never says directly. That beauty is not love. That love is not loyalty. That most men fall in love not with a woman, but with an image they created in their own minds, flickering torches in a marble hall. A young man gazes at a woman, but her face slowly fades into a mask. And when reality doesn't match that illusion, the same men call her deceptive. Plato was not warning men about women. He was warning them about the way men see women and how their blindness would destroy them. Fast forward 2,400 years. The marble has turned to glass. The agora has turned to Instagram. Men still worship beauty, still seek validation, still destroy themselves chasing the same illusion Plato described millennia ago. Plato would have smiled, not out of joy, but out of recognition, because he predicted it. When men forget philosophy, they fall to fantasy. When men forget reason, they become slaves to emotion. And that is the first warning Plato left for men. Never mistake beauty for truth, for when you do, she owns you and you will not even realize it. Plato once said that most people live chained inside a cave, mistaking shadows for reality. Now imagine modern relationships as that same cave. Men see the shadow of love, affection, validation, beauty, and call it truth. But behind that shadow often stands manipulation, self-interest, and ego. Plato warned, "Do not confuse appearance with essence." Yet today, many men chase appearances, the perfect face, the perfect body, and end up enslaved by illusion. You see her profile, 1,000 likes, flawless photos, eyes full of promises. You think you found the one, but Plato would ask, do you love her soul or the image projected upon your wall? He knew that desire blinds the rational mind, and once blinded, man mistakes fantasy for love. Every text, every compliment, every dopamine hit becomes a new chain. Men no longer see clearly. They see what they want to believe. In Plato's dialogues, Socrates often challenged others to question their desires. Why do you love? For beauty? For pleasure? For power? Because if your love depends on what fades, then your soul will fade with it. Modern men fall when they give their peace to a woman who thrives on attention. When your happiness depends on her validation, you've already surrendered the throne of your mind. True love, Plato said, is the love of the soul, not of the senses. But most men never reach that level. They stop at the surface. To awaken, Plato said, is painful. The light burns your eyes at first. When a man finally sees beyond illusion, he feels betrayed by the world he once trusted. But that pain is sacred. It means you finally opened your eyes. When you learn to love from strength, not need, you rise from the cave and see reality as it is. The truth hurts, but so does staying blind. And Plato would whisper, better the pain of awakening than the comfort of illusion. Plato dreamt of a world ruled by reason, a republic where justice guided the soul. But he feared a future where emotions ruled over wisdom, where pleasure became the new god. Look around today. His fear has come true. Modern society doesn't value virtue anymore. It rewards appearance, manipulation, and noise. Influence replaces integrity, and the same women who once embodied grace and modesty now trade virtue for validation. Plato warned, when desire governs, truth dies. He saw it coming, an age where the soul would be silent, and vanity would speak loudest. In Plato's time, philosophers debated truth in the agora, the public square. Today, that square is social media. But instead of truth, it's filled with filters, poses, and empty slogans about empowerment. Modern women play the virtue game, speaking of morals while selling seduction, preaching self-love while chasing attention. Every post becomes a transaction, a currency of likes, a marketplace of false virtue. And men, they become the buyers, paying with attention, time, and dignity. Plato's voice echoes through time. That which is praised without truth corrupts both the giver and the receiver. Plato's ideal man was the philosopher king, strong in reason, unmoved by flattery. But today's men are no longer kings. They're jesters in the court of approval, dancing for a glance, apologizing for masculinity, afraid to lead. Modern culture teaches them to tolerate disrespect in the name of love. But Plato said, to prefer what is just, even when it is painful, that is true strength. If you bow to false virtue, you become a servant of illusion. A king cannot serve two masters, truth and validation. One must be sacrificed. The world outside may be corrupt, but the republic within you can still stand. Plato taught that the soul has three parts: reason, spirit, and desire. When reason leads, peace follows. When desire leads, chaos reigns. To rebuild yourself, you must restore that order. Silence the noise, question every illusion, and act from wisdom, not impulse. Do not argue with corruption. Rise above it. Live as if the ideal world already exists inside you. Because the real republic was never outside. It was always within the disciplined mind of the awakened man. Plato believed that balance sustains every system, from the cosmos to the human soul. But when one side forgets its nature, the entire order collapses. Once men led not through domination, but through stability. They were pillars of wisdom, reason, and restraint. Now many men have traded that strength for comfort, lust, and laziness. And when men fall asleep, women rise, not from virtue, but necessity. The balance shifts. The protector becomes the dependent. Plato would say, power is never lost. It only changes hands. So when modern men surrender discipline, emotional control, and purpose, they don't lose power to the void. They give it away. Plato warned that false leaders emerge when real ones vanish. And in modern love, this is exactly what's happening. When men stop embodying strength, women begin to imitate it, becoming strong, not from peace, but from pain. They wear resilience like armor, not choice. They say, I don't need a man, not because they're fulfilled, but because they've been disappointed too many times. Yet this imitation of masculine energy creates confusion, not harmony, because power without balance leads to chaos. The masculine without reason and the feminine without trust. Both suffer. Plato would have called this a distortion of nature, when everyone tries to lead and no one remembers why leadership mattered in the first place. How did men lose their power? Not through war, but through comfort, through screens, pleasure, and emotional dependence. Plato said that the soul becomes weak when it seeks pleasure without purpose. Men once sought honor. Now they seek validation. They once built cities. Now they build profiles. They once conquered fears. Now they fear rejection. Every time a man chooses ease over effort, silence over truth, compliance over conviction, he feeds the decay. And what emerges? A world where women carry burdens meant for men, where masculinity becomes shame and power becomes guilt. But Plato never believed collapse was the end. He saw it as a cycle. From the ruins of weakness, wisdom can rise again. The modern man must rediscover the philosopher-warrior within him, the union of thought and action. He must learn again to lead with calm, to speak with clarity, to love with strength, to protect without control, to serve without submission. When a man stands firm in his essence, the world realigns around him. Women no longer need to mimic his strength. They can rest in their own. Harmony returns, and the cycle ends, not through dominance, but through understanding. Plato's vision of balance lives again, not in society first, but in the individual who dares to awaken his lost sovereignty. Plato once said, "Love is a serious mental disease." He didn't mean love itself is poison, only when it becomes obsession. In every era, men have fallen not to armies, but to their own desires. Desire blinds reason, consumes logic, and replaces wisdom with hunger. A man begins to chase not love, but the feeling of being wanted. He forgets who he is the moment someone mirrors his need. That's when his downfall begins. Because the strongest prison isn't built by others. It's built by the illusions he chooses to believe. In Plato's world, love was divided. Eros, passion, philia, friendship, and agape, truthful love. But modern love has merged them into one chaotic storm. Men now confuse attention with affection, intimacy with validation, and beauty with virtue. They chase the image of perfection, sculpted by social media and fantasy, not by reality. Every perfect woman becomes a projection of what he lacks within himself. He doesn't fall in love with her. He falls in love with what he thinks she will fix in him. But Plato warned, the object of love is not the beautiful body, but the beautiful soul. Until a man understands that, he will keep mistaking emotional chaos for connection. When desire rules the soul, reason becomes its servant. Plato compared this to a chariot. Reason must guide passion, or both horses run wild and crash. Modern men, however, hand the reins to desire. They beg, chase, apologize endlessly, mistaking emotional intensity for depth. They tolerate disrespect, manipulation, and lies, just to avoid being alone. But every act of desperation erodes self-respect. And when self-respect dies, love cannot survive. The tragedy? He blames women for being cold or heartless, yet it was his surrender that killed the warmth. Plato would say, he who cannot master his passions becomes the slave of another's whims. Plato didn't tell men to reject love. He told them to refine it, to rise from lust to loyalty, from obsession to wisdom. True love begins when a man loves himself enough not to be destroyed by another, when his heart burns with purpose, not need, when he gives but never begs. Desire then becomes a teacher, showing him where he's weak and where he must grow stronger. He learns that attraction without alignment is a trap, that real love doesn't drain him, it elevates him. And in that realization, he steps beyond the shadow of desire. He no longer worships women, he respects them. He no longer begs for love, he embodies it. Plato lived in a world where virtues, wisdom, temperance, justice were the foundation of relationships. But in the modern age, image has replaced integrity. Many women are taught to chase validation, not virtue, power, not partnership. They speak of equality but crave dominance, of love but fear submission. What was once admiration for a strong man has turned into competition with him. The tragedy is not that men and women have changed, it's that they've forgotten why they were meant to balance one another. In this chaos, both lose, because respect cannot survive where reverence is mocked. In ancient Athens, Plato observed how the pursuit of pleasure destroyed moral structure. Today, the pattern repeats, only faster, louder, and digital. Many modern women confuse standards with selfishness and independence with isolation. They demand kings while offering no loyalty, seek protection while scorning the protector. It's not hatred, it's confusion, born from a culture that tells them to take endlessly but never give. Plato warned of this decay. When desire rules over virtue, society collapses. And now men are withdrawing, not out of anger, but exhaustion, because no man can lead where he's no longer respected. Plato believed harmony was the essence of justice, every part playing its role with honor. In relationships, that harmony means polarity, masculine steadiness meeting feminine grace. But modern dynamics mock that balance, calling it old-fashioned. Yet nature hasn't changed. The feminine still seeks security, the masculine still seeks meaning. When women reject their softness, they harden, but not with strength, with resentment. When men are denied their leadership, they withdraw, not in peace but in quiet defeat. Balance is not oppression, it's order. Without it, love becomes a battlefield of egos. Still, Plato's wisdom offers a way back. He taught that virtue, not beauty, not charm, not power, is what sustains love. When a woman learns grace, patience, and understanding, she doesn't lose power. She becomes irreplaceable. When a man learns discipline, purpose, and truth, he becomes more than desirable. He becomes dependable. The reunion of virtue between man and woman is not weakness. It's civilization reborn. In a world where everyone wants to be right, Plato reminds us, the good life begins when we stop winning against each other and start building with each other. Love, then, returns not as a battlefield, but as a sacred ground where strength meets grace once more. The city sleeps. A man sits alone in the dim light of his apartment, the echoes of old arguments still in the air. He has everything people chase, comfort, connection, validation, yet inside, only silence. He remembers Plato's words. The soul takes nothing with it to the next life, but its education and its character. He finally understands. He spent years trying to be loved, not trying to be true. The applause of women, the praise of friends, the noise of desire, all distractions. Now stripped of illusion, he faces the one battle Plato said no man escapes, mastery of the self. He walks through the streets before dawn, neon lights flickering on wet pavement. Every face he passes reminds him of a former version of himself, the pleaser, the performer, the dreamer. He recalls Plato's allegory of the cave, how most people live in shadows believing them to be reality. He had been one of them, chasing approval instead of truth. But once you see the light, you cannot go back to the cave. He smiles faintly. The pain of awakening is sharp, but it is honest. Plato was right. The hardest freedom to accept is the one that requires responsibility. Weeks later, he writes again, not texts for affection, but reflections for clarity. He begins each morning in silence, reading fragments from the Republic. He no longer measures love by how much it excites him, but by how much it brings him peace. When a woman flirts, he doesn't chase, he listens. When someone withdraws, he doesn't panic, he breathes. He has stopped trying to control others and started mastering himself. The storms outside no longer move him. Plato's wisdom has become muscle memory, reason guiding emotion, not the other way around. At dawn, he stands by his window again. Same city, same skyline, but a different man. He thinks of all he lost, the illusions, the chaos, the masks, and smiles. Because in losing those things, he found himself. He whispers Plato's final truth. The greatest victory is to conquer yourself. Love, he realizes, is not a battlefield. It's a mirror. Power is not control, it's awareness. And wisdom is not detachment. It's seeing clearly and still choosing to love. The screen fades to black, and a single line appears. He who masters himself cannot be enslaved by anyone, not even love.